G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and in the wee hours of this morning, long time before I get up normally and go to work, I was reading through the comments on, because I don't sleep well, I haven't for many years, reading through the comments on the video, and I noticed a lot of people saying something to the effect of, well, Age of Sigmar does need a 4th edition. Okay. This here is a meme on the screen. A meme that I created, but just to roughly represent what I perceive as Games Workshop's current cycle with its games. You're on the border between purple and red right now. So, to go around clockwise in order, Games Workshop creates a new edition of a game. They release working rules. Then we get power creep. Then we get a release or re-release of a beloved legacy faction. They write useless FAQs which don't address the actual problems in the game. They address all the 1%ers in the game. Then they bloat the system with expansions, fail to understand the system's issues, and then the whole cycle repeats. We are currently in the failing to understand the system issues, creating a new edition part of this cycle. And this is exactly where Age of Sigmar sits right now, because the issues with the game stem from the bloat with expansions, the power creep that occurred, the re-releasing of beloved legacy factions, and the writing of useless FAQs. 3rd edition had orange and red down to a T. So did 2nd edition. So, does Age of Sigmar need a 4th edition right now? And philosophical thought potentially here. Did Age of Sigmar need to keep all of the changes that have been made to it in 3rd edition? Or can a game system backtrack? I don't know the answer to this. I'm just throwing it out there as a what if. Because we always talk about, well, this system has been bloated or been changed so much to this point, we need a new edition. Why, instead of re-releasing the game, bringing out a new starter box, a new rulebook, all new core books for all of the different factions, why not just say, this particular expansion is not going to be played. This particular faction is so overpowered, we're going to rewrite just this one faction. Instead, people have gotten very used, over the last 30, 40 years of Games Workshop, people have gotten used to the fact that they're going to just have to replace all of their stuff. And I think, what would you rather? Okay, feel like you've wasted your money on an expansion pack, or feel like you've wasted all of your money on an entire edition of a system? Because that's kind of where I fall right now when it comes to Age of Sigmar. I think, well, if you took away some of the weird quirks of 3.0's character mechanics, for example, and how Hero Hammer it's become, which is a problem as old as time itself, but you know, Games Workshop likes the Hero Hammer approach. They like being able to have characters that they can base their releases around, a big centerpiece showcase model, as it were, and they like to have that character, and they like to power them up. They like them to be strong, because they want it to be a selling point of the miniature. This problem goes back to 2nd edition 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy. That's how old the problem is. It's a literally decades old problem. And it's a trap they keep falling into. And Age of Sigmar is especially susceptible to the trap. Because in the case of Age of Sigmar, what you have is you have a game which is centered around having heroes who have massive effects on their faction. The named heroes especially. And those named heroes are often these gigantic, beyond anything any other version of Warhammer has seen. They're they're beyond the Primarchs of 40k and 30k in scope. Many of these heroes, we're talking creatures that are so big that they take whole figure cases to transport in and of themselves. And they're not gigantic, dumb monsters. They're not dragons. They're not ogres and giants. These are standard characters who are leaders of factions. And it could be as simple as the aerial hybrid creature, for example, that's riding a giant dung beetle. It could be Archaon on his three-headed, but definitely non-Slaneshi, but a bit of horned rat influenced dragon. It can be, demonic mount. It's not a dragon at all. Those are just similarities. It could be the Eidolon, who is one of the smallest ones, the Herald of Mathlan. It could be one of the new vampire characters. For example, I'm thinking of a certain Strigoi, although they're not called that now. They're the Flesh Eater Courts character. And they're just absurd. They're obscene. And, of course, we've got the faction power creep to go on with that. And it's like, well, hey, we released the Flesh Eater Courts. They're extremely overpowered, as everyone knew they would be. Why don't we walk that back? Well, they want to have their cake and eat it too as a company. They've decided that, well, power sells, let's sell power. Oh, we get negative backlash towards this. Well, we can't get rid of that book now because, well, we sold that book in that condition to sell the power in the first place. That was the selling point of it. So if we do that, we're going to really annoy all the people who just bought into it because there wasn't a Leagues of Vatan style uproar for our terrible writing, which is becoming a hallmark of the company, frankly. The terrible writing. Rather than trying to say to the company, you need to rework these books, you can't just release them in this failed state. There is clearly a power gulf between this faction and the other factions in the game. What's going on here? Instead of doing that, what we seem to do as a player base is just accept that, well, that faction's just going to be overpowered. It's going to suck when you have to play it, but, it probably won't come up that often. Just work around it. Just work around it. And we make all these excuses. We find all these ways for us to cope with the changes in addition. And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be up to the community, the player base, to have to deal with the fallout of bad system design, bad rulebook design, bad design of factions, for example. And much of it does center around those big centerpiece showcase models. Because once you take that one model out of a faction, it often changes quite a bit of the dynamic on the actual tabletop. Because these characters, well, let's think about it from the perspective of people writing rules. You go, I have a character here. They're, a third of the size of an Imperial Knight. They're gigantic, or maybe even in some cases up to the size of an Imperial Knight, who knows. And they're on this 100, 120 mil round base. This is a massive, massive character. It's bigger than most monsters in old Warhammer fantasy battles, bigger than old world monsters. And this is the head of the faction. And, well, we've combined all of the different stat lines of this character and their mount and any other miniatures that may be on the base are combined into one single entity. Well, we can't make that a weak entity. If we make it too weak, then it'll get killed too quickly. Who would buy this expensive model that we've created? We need to create a model that is, worthy of the stat line that one would perceive that something this large should have. So, what do? You go, well, it's got to have a lot of wounds because it's pretty big, It's a lot of monster to kill there. What about, attacks-wise? What do you do there? Do you go the attacks of the monster? Oh, no, the attacks of the monster, they'd be a bit... It wouldn't have quite the weapon skill, as it were. How about we base most of the attacks on the character? Okay, well, we'll give the character all these cool special weapons. They won't have the strength of the monster, but let's think to the monster now. If the monster doesn't have a lot of attacks, because it doesn't have a very good hit chance, because it's only a dumb monster, well, maybe we make up for that in some way. make it so whatever does hit has a very high chance of wounding and causing mortal wounds. Alright, well let's give it like multiple wounds D3 or D6, or multiple wounds just 3 flat for every wound it causes. And it'll wound things really easily. Maybe there's some kind of reroll in there. Its cause is so big and rending that as long as you hit, you're pretty much guaranteed to wound. So we give it very few attacks. We make it semi-hard for them to hit, like 4 pluses. And then we'll just say that they always wound. And that seems to be the way they write these things. Well, this character, was still a couple lucky, mortal wound shots. This character could still keel over, even with, 15, 20 wounds. I know what we'll do. We'll give them a piece of war gear that protects them and also mysteriously protects their mount because they're one and the same creature. We'll make it so they can't suffer more than X amount of mortal wounds per turn. And so you start to fall into this cycle of, because of this, then we did this, and then because of that, we did this. I think that's how that many of these creatures are written, rather than trying to write what is best for the game system. And so I return to my original point from the start of the video. Do you need a 4th edition of Age of Sigmar, or do you need them to walk back or fix some of the choices that they've made in the game design for the edition? And I would argue that is what needs to happen. Walk back some changes, fix the game design. Don't try and just say, you know what, we've completely ruined, we've burnt the meal. We cooked this delicious roast dinner, left the turkey in the oven, the turkey is ruined, let's make a new turkey. What if you have the ability to avoid that somehow? And I really, really, really want to hone in on that point. Can the company, can the player base work out a way that you could use either FAQs or say that certain books are not to be used in order to fix the problem? Because needing a new edition is a new edition for everyone. Removal of an expansion is only an issue for those that were playing the expansion. And I know that's a harsh thing to say, but what do you think is the lesser of the two evils here in actual reality? Because, remember, we are on the purple moving into red. We're on the failing to understand the system's issues, create a new edition to solve your problems, part of this circular chart. And we're going to end up in the orange territory, the release of working rules, straight away. Then it's a question of when the power creep, the legacy faction, which usually is power crept, the writing useless FAQs, and the bloat with expansions. We're literally around the corner from all of those issues. And this is pretty much every Games Workshop game to me in a nutshell. Anyway, what do you think? Is it possible to walk it back? Am I just clinging on to false hope here? I don't know. Put in the comments below. Make with the outer circle. I'm going to go get showered and go to work, I think. Catch you all next time.